Heredity. Gregor Mendel was the first person to understand the principles of genetics. He discovered this through studying a species of garden peas, Pisum sativum. He chose peas because there were identifiable traits. They were self-fertilizing, can be artificially fertilized, and has a short growth period. Now in genetics, there are something called phenotypes and genotypes. A phenotype is any physiological or bodily characteristics or behavior of an organism. So simply put, a trait. The effect of these genes can vary in accordance with the environment in which the genes are expressed in. However, on the right, these are examples of what phenotypes are. Gregor Mendel used these characteristics of the pea plant in his experiment. A genotype is the genetic makeup of an individual. We often see genotypes through Punnett squares, which are shown in the right. It shows the genetic makeup of the flowers. An allele has different versions of genetic information on a gene. For example, the capital Y allele represents yellow seeds, and the lowercase y allele represents green seeds. There are also different types of genotypes. There are homozygous genotypes where there are two identical alleles for a gene, and there are heterozygous genes where there are two different alleles for a gene. On the right, we can see that it's either both capital Y alleles or lowercase alleles for homozygous, and on the bottom here for heterozygous, two different alleles for the gene. To this, there are dominant and recessive traits. The dominant is expressed on the heterozygous condition, but the recessive is not expressed in the heterozygous condition. So the dominant trait overrules the recessive trait. These are some examples of the dominant and recessive traits in Punnett squares. On example 1, one parent has a dominant YY homozygous genotype, and the other parent has a recessive YY homozygous genotype. So the outcome is heterozygous YY genotype for all four outcomes. So the offspring will be all yellow seeds. And on example 2, both parents are dominant YY homozygous genotypes. So their only outcome are yellow seeds because there are two Y dominant alleles as the outcome for all of them. On example 3, both parents are recessive YY homozygous genotypes. So their only outcomes are green seeds because there are two Y recessive alleles that do not dominate over the other. On example 4, there will be a 25% chance for an offspring with a green seed and a 75% chance for an offspring with a yellow seed. This is because only one of them do not have a dominant Y allele. All of the others do, so they are all yellow because the dominant Y gene dominates. There is also something called an incomplete dominance where neither allele is completely dominant. The heterozygous genotype can yield an in-between phenotype of both. So the mixture between genotypes are seen in the phenotypes. There is also codominance where more than one allele is dominant. The heterozygous genotype shows the phenotype of both dominant alleles. Examples of codominance are through blood types. We can refer to the diagram on the left for this example. On the right, there is a Punnett square setup with parents of type O blood and type AB blood. So there is a 50% chance for an offspring with type A blood and a 50% chance for an offspring with type B blood. Now there is also X-linked inheritance, which means an allele located on the X chromosome is passed down to the offspring. On the right, we can see how this would play out with a woman carrier and a man non-carrier. Polygenetic inheritance. Inheritance of traits determined by the interactions of multiple genes, having a bit of each trait. Most traits in living things are governed by many genes and tended to produce continuous variations in genotypes. And that is all for today's lesson.